and welcome to Project HR, a podcast dedicated to building better workplaces. Project HR is brought to you every Thursday by Projections, an IRI company. IRI helps organizations navigate workplace challenges, improve employee engagement and productivity, manage labor relations, and implement effective communication strategies to achieve their goals. For more information, you can visit IRI online at iriconsultants.com and Projections at projectionsinc.com. I am Jennifer Orqua, Director of Business Development for IRI, and your host for today's episode of Project HR. Now, we're all kind of familiar with the statistic. Over the course of our lifetimes, the average person spends about a third of their lives at work. That's more than 90,000 hours on the job. So with that understood, it shouldn't be a radical thought to hope that those hours might be spent working for organizations that are focused on fundamental human needs and optimized for our own well-being. Today's guest is Yogesh Soni. Yogesh works in the tech industry, and he has worked as an AI product leader, and he is the author of a new book that takes on this notion of a new era at work, titled Digital Belonging: Building Human-Centered Organizations. Yogesh, thanks so much for joining me here on Project HR.
Thanks, Jennifer. It's a wonderful feeling to be here. It's an honor to be here.
So I'm going to start off with what might be an obvious question, considering your position as an artificial intelligence product leader. The humanity that's present in your book is surprising. How does an AI guy write such an innately human book?
That's a great question. So even though I build artificial intelligence systems, but deep down, if you really think deep down, I'm pretty much still a human person. So I am not like powered by artificial intelligence, right? But jokes aside, I have been working as a product manager for very long, I think 10 years now. And one of the fundamental skills that I have is deep human empathy, without which we cannot build products that our customers love. So as I turned my attention towards our workplaces and I imagined our companies, our organizations as products, I realized that the user experience of this product is terrible. And that's how I started figuring out, okay, what are the actual needs of the employees? And that's how this book came about.
So your perspectives in the book are so thought-provoking, and the book itself is a call to action for employers who are still promoting traditional work structures, particularly this quote that says, "Continue the status quo and risk losing your employees to disengagement, disillusionment, and burnout." So are traditional work environments really that harmful to employee well-being?
Unfortunately, yes. So I'll give you some statistics. According to CDC, about 120,000 people die every year directly from work-related stress. The workplace is now the fifth leading cause of death in the United States. That's about diabetes.
Wow.
And healthcare costs related to stress is about $190 billion annually, right? So yes, unfortunately, our workplaces are not doing very well. And it's not only about stress, it's also about engagement. One of the Gallup studies shows that about 85% of the global workforce is either actively disengaged or not engaged at all. And more than half the US workers are completely burnt out. So yes, I think we are in another kind of pandemic apart from the COVID-19.
And you describe employees in traditional in-office work environments as lonely. I mean, how lonely are we? What impact does our loneliness have on our work? And how can our collective loneliness be improved?
We are very, very lonely. Again, the statistics. Cigna did a study around the loneliness, and they found that about 97 million US workers, that's 61% of our total workforce, are lonely. And you can be actually lonely, and it's got nothing to do with in person versus working remotely in your home offices. But this study was actually done when we were all working in person, right? So you could be still lonely even if you are, in a building full of your coworkers. And it's really the loneliness is really about not having great relationship, meaningful relationship with your coworkers, or misalignment between your own personal values and the values of your organization, lack of support from leaders, and so on. And when we are lonely, it wreaks havoc with our mental and emotional well-being, and it affects our creativity negatively. And creativity is so important for in the knowledge economy, right? So it's like if you're always stressed and if you're being chased by a tiger in a jungle, you're not gonna solve mathematical equations here, right? All you're
Right.
doing is just running for your damn life, right?
For sure.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the human need to belong. How does that play into this?
This is my favorite topic. I can go on for hours on this topic. Yeah. So, one of my favorite studies was an experiment conducted by researchers. What they did was they did an fMRI scan of babies as young as 2 weeks old. And what they found in the study is the cognitive stage of the baby's brains, the state that they were in, was very similar to the cognitive state of people who are engaged in social settings, social interactions, social conversations. So, in other words, we are born to belong. And we know this from our tales of that humans are social beings and all those things, right? But
Hmm.
just how much we are, I mean, it's really comes out from the research. At workplaces, it translates into many, many different ways. It manifests into, for example, being valued for the work that you're putting in, recognized by your peers, your leaders, having some kind of psychological safety at work to do your best work, and so on and so forth. So, really, human need to belong is something we cannot ignore.
Hmm.
And if the leaders are ignoring this need, they will soon see that the employees are looking for other places to work, which do offer them this basic human need.
All right, Yogesh, I'm going to take a quick sponsorship break right now, but when we return, I want to talk about what makes for a human centered working environment. We'll be right back.
Companies today often spend a lot of time and money on employee engagement, but they don't always get the results that they want. At IRI Consultants, we help companies create an engaging culture where employees feel valued and appreciated. We combine our expertise in human resources with cutting-edge technology to deliver proven solutions for improving your workplace morale, productivity, and profitability. The IRI team is made up of experienced management consultants who, since 1979, have helped thousands of companies navigate workplace challenges. We'll help you achieve your goals by combining research-based best practices with real-life experience and practical insights to develop customized solutions based on your company's unique needs and challenges. At IRI, we focus on providing the right solution at the right price point to help you improve performance through better employee engagement strategies. Learn more today at iriconsultants.com.
I'm back with Yogesh Soni, AI product leader and the author of Digital Belonging, Building Human-Centered Organizations. So, Yogesh, let's dive right in with the acronyms. What is the digital, DIGITAL, values for belonging?
Yeah, so when I wrote the book Digital Belonging, I took sort of a wordplay, and that word digital is a wordplay for the acronym digital, which stands for dignity, inclusion, growth, independence, trust, appreciation, and love. So these are the basic human needs that are really, really needed to be fulfilled for any human to be functioning at their peak creative ability.
Hmm.
And it's just a nice way to remember all those needs are. And if any of these needs are not fulfilled, then you just cannot hope to have the sense of belonging in that human
Hmm.
person. I'll give you an example, a little story, if you will.
Sure.
Let's pick up the first word, dignity here. So you would imagine that we live in a country, with United States, where I think we deeply care about dignity for all, freedom for all, liberty for all, right? And you would imagine that our workplaces uphold those human values that were put together by our founding fathers. One of my friends, she comes from also from India, and she belonged to a low caste uh, in India. Low caste is like low social class,
Hmm.
and low caste people. Her forefathers have been ancestors have been brutalized for thousands of years. So in fact, she does not use a last name because that makes it easy for people to recognize that she's a low caste, and then she faces the repercussions, right?
Hmm.
So she moved to US working for a big tech company. Unfortunately for her, she was working as a red badge person. And red badge, for those who don't know, are contract workers. The blue workers are full-time employees. red badges are temporary workers. So she's working as a temporary worker. Little did she know that the red badge is another caste system. She is by default seen by her blue badge workers as slightly inferior. So she works as a software quality engineer, and she once pointed out a bug in a code that was written by a blue badge worker. And that blue badge person, he told her he was not quite unhappy by someone red badge person pointing out in a bug or defect in the code that he had written. He was very proud of his work, right? So instead of really trying to learn, okay, what's wrong, trying to fix it, he just insulted her brain. He said that you are so abominable that your own father refused to give his last name to you. When she heard that, she was reeking with shame and anger, right? And guess what? She cannot do anything about it because she's a red badge worker. Remember, she's a temporary worker. The human resources of that company where she's employed does not have a redressal system for that worker at all. And she cannot go back to her own employer, the vendor company, because the vendor company is providing a service and they cannot really go against their customers. So she has really no way to resolve this, and she's like sitting with shame, right? And shame eventually leads to humiliation, leads to uh, violence in some cases. Right? So that's how it is, right? So it's very important to uphold the dignity. And similarly, in the book, I go through each of these words, these human needs, and see and explain how important it is for any organization, not just to uphold these for those in power, but every single employee. Unless you do that, you cannot hope to build an organization, a sustainable organization where people actually want to work. Because the toxic workplaces, the toxic environments, it spreads. It spreads
Sure.
like virus.
Yeah. So let's talk about the TAC strategic framework, the pillars of a human-centric organization.
So, as you very well know, that transforming an organization, introducing some kind of change in an organization is very hard. Breaking people's habits is very hard. So, we spoke about the digital framework or digital values, right? So, and propagating these values is really about changing behavior of every single employee within the organization. So I came up with this strategic framework, which is simple and easy to remember. TACT stands for transparency, autonomy, community, and technology. So, very briefly, transparency is fundamental to building trust in an organization and also having some kind of psychological safety. As we discussed earlier, without psychological safety, people are really not in a very creative state. And autonomy is all about distributing the decision making authority, giving it to people who are closer to the needs of the customers and letting them decide for themselves how to best fulfill the needs of the customers. Autonomy is also about who to work with, when to work, where to work, which is probably the direction the world is moving, thanks to one of the positive things from the COVID 19 pandemic, right? Uh, Community is really at the heart of this book. So when we talk about need to belong, and when we talk about there was this McKinsey article recently released by Aaron Smith, if I remember well. He said that sense of belonging, in fact, not having a sense of belonging, is one of the top reasons why employees are quitting in what is called the Great Resignation. And the sad part is the employers don't even understand this. They don't even know this. They think most of the employers think that the workers are leaving because they're seeking higher compensation, for example. So it's really the sense of belonging is supremely important for employees to feel that they are working in a place where they truly belong, right?
Sure.
And if you think about it, if there is no community, there's no way I can belong if there's no community to belong to, right? So that's why community is at the heart of everything that we should be doing at an organization.
For
And
sure.
lastly, technology. since more and more companies and more people are working remotely, technology is like absolutely essential in doing everything we do. But more importantly, we have to uh, use technology intentionally. So for example, instead of just replicating the water coolers into virtual water coolers, you're just trying to recreate the real, in-person experience and take it to the digital realm,
Hmm.
uh, thoughtlessly, I'd add. So instead, what we should be doing is figure out what is the intention, the outcome, let's say, is to increase dignity for everyone, right? You figure that
Hmm.
out. You figure out manually how to do this manually first, and then use the technology to scale throughout your organization.
That makes perfect
So
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask, how does the psychological safety that comes from transparency translate into organizational success?
Let me share a story with you that I experienced a long time ago. I was working in this very famous, highly successful Fortune 500 technology company, and I was working in an organization which was about 100 people. So once the leader of our organization organized this Ask Me Anything session. So we went into a big auditorium, 100 people. I was sitting in the back bench. I was always been a backbencher. So when you go to this Ask Me Anything session, you would be thinking, okay, now here is my chance to really ask anything, right? So maybe we'll come together, discuss about the business, discuss about problems, issues, and so on and so forth, right? So we started the session, and one of my friends, let's call him the naive, curious guy. He just took everything, on face value, and
Hmm.
he let down a simple, harmless question. So he asked our leader, "Hey, so about this product XYZ, it's not doing very well in the market. We are not seeing any revenues in the past few quarters. We all know that how important this product is to companies' business strategy. So what's happening there? Are we not investing enough?" And the big boss, the leader, lost his completely, and all of a sudden, his was hyper. His nose was vibrating as if it was a epicenter of an earthquake or something like that. And he asked the naive, curious guy, "Okay, so you think you are such a big shot? Let me do something. Let me make you the leader of that initiative, that product. Let me give you 6 months and see how much revenues can you muster. Would you bet your job on this?"
Hmm.
And the naive, curious guy, he had like no answer. He had, so you can imagine, right? And it's just not him, it's me and the 100 other people that were watching this.
Hmm.
And within the next few months, I would imagine me, my naive, curious guy friend, and 10 others quit. Yeah. The
Hmm.
reason for me for quitting was after that incident, I felt that I could not really express myself in, so-called, like if you get invited to a brainstorming sessions, I could
Hmm.
not bring together or speak openly about different ideas just in case I get target on my back, right? And if
Hmm.
I'm not able to speak myself, I felt claustrophobic, and it was really not a good feeling, right? So I had to quit. I had to find some other place where I could speak up my mind. So just
Hmm.
imagine that those 2 minutes, one meeting, 2 minutes,
Hmm.
that cost, how much is it to replace 10 people in
Right.
Silicon Valley?
Sure.
It's about $1 million,
For
right?
sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Astronomical.
Yeah, so just 2 minutes, bad meeting, bad example, $1 million cost to company, right?
Yeah.
So on the other hand, if you really would, how would a psychologically safe environment come about in similar situation, right? I would imagine a good leader who is not afraid of failure himself would have responded to this question by admitting that we are not doing very well. And since he has the visibility, tell us the reasons. Maybe it's not about investment. Maybe it's due to lack of market demand or our inability to get a pulse on the needs of the customers, things like that, right? And the people have come together, smart people, 100 world-class engineers, scientists have come together, right? So
Hmm.
they can find solutions.
Yeah.
So yeah.
For sure. So, can you detail for me how workplace community can be both a strategy and a mindset?
So, community mindset is all about realizing that you want to succeed with others. You never want to win alone. You want to grow with your coworkers. You
Hmm.
never want to let down your own team. But if someone is struggling, someone is hurting, You don't leave people behind. You pick them up and then you bring them along together. Community as a strategy means everything that you do, you put the power of community behind it. For example, this is a story that I discussed in my book. A person called Steve in Johnson and Johnson decided to do. He joined Johnson and Johnson, and he couldn't figure out how the innovation works in that company. So he started a community of people who would deliver their ideas using TED Talks. Within 6 years, the community grew from zero to more than 20,000 people. And you can imagine 20,000 people coming together, delivering these powerful ideas, listened by the leaders of the company. They got funding. Lots of projects and products came about, which was helpful to a lot of customers of Johnson and Johnson, right? So this is the power of the community, and you can apply this strategy to almost everything, to hiring, to selling good products, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, interesting. All right, it's time for another quick break. We'll be right back after this. You're listening to the Project HR podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Orqua, and my guest today is Yogesh Soni, AI product leader and author of Digital Belonging, Building Human-Centered Organizations. And we're back. So, Yogesh, can you tell us a little bit about the good expedition behaviors and the wilderness expedition that you attended in Chile, how that trip inspired those behaviors?
My trip in Patagonia, Chile was extremely hard because we were in the wilderness all by ourselves. We had no access to technology. We were hiking 12 days, carrying 65 pounds of weight on our backs, and so on and so forth. And the whole thing was quite uncertain because there were no marked trails or anything like that. So we had to chart our own paths. And this is not unlike our business, which is full of uncertainties, right? What I realized there was the behavior, good expedition behavior, like self-care, taking care of yourself, or taking care about your team, or working with meager resources. Some of these behaviors was absolutely essential. So the things like what I see in our organizations where teams are fighting with each other, or even team members are, trying to backstab each other, right? If we were doing that back in Patagonia mountains, we would die, really. Like, really, we could not have won alone. So we had to win together. And what I realized was, since having a wilderness expedition is very similar to the world of business, why not have the good expedition behavior that brings together strangers and lead them to a success in a very difficult expedition can translate also similarly to the business success, right?
Yeah.
So that's it is all about.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. So what can leaders do to make their own teams or departments more of that community that we've been talking about, that we should be striving for? What can we do?
I think first thing is to realize that community can never be mandated into existence, like in top down. CEO cannot say that, hey, let's form a few communities, right? So communities are being formed as we speak. It's really about people. You will see, if you really look, you will see the instigators are everywhere. They're talking to each other. Maybe they're working on a few ideas on their evenings and weekends even. And the idea is really to give like more oil or more gas to those little sparks, right? Bring them forth, give them platforms, some stage, give them resources, right? Let them meet up in some, take them to Hawaii, let them build something together or something like that, right?
Right.
Slowly, and then you'll start to see that more and more communities come together. And again, similar to toxic behaviors that are spread like virus, even the community behavior spread like virus, but in a good way.
Yeah, that's great advice. So if our audience wants to find out more about you or about digital belonging, where should they go?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn at YK Soni Author, or you can visit me on my website, yksoniauthor.com. I would love to hear your stories. Please do reach out. I would love to work with leaders who are really interested and genuinely want to foster a culture with high sense of belonging.
And I want to let everybody know that those links will be included in this episode's companion guide. So be sure to unlock that today at projectionsinc.com/podcast. Right now, though, Yogesh, it is time for our lightning round questions. These are questions I ask of every guest of the podcast. Are you ready?
Yes.
All right. So our first question is always a topic showdown. In this episode, we've been talking about the importance of human-centered workplaces and human belonging. In your opinion, Yogesh, which of these quotes about inclusion speaks the loudest? those who have a strong sense of love and belonging have the courage to be imperfect. That's Brene Brown, one of my favorites. Or, a few good words don't just make your day. They also give the sense of belonging and confidence to take the next big step forward.
So you got me on this one. I'm a huge Brene Brown fan. I am also learning to live through my imperfections. So it has to be the former.
All right, perfect. So next question, what's the best book you've read recently?
Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown.
Very good. Next question, what is your favorite thing about the work that you do?
Imagine the future and build it in the present.
Oh, I like that. That's good. So I'm going to move that right into the next question, which is, what's the best piece of advice you've ever been given?
You should write a book.
Well, there you go. Advice taken, I guess. All right, last question. Who or what inspires you?
There was this 19th century physicist, one of the greatest physicists ever. His name was James Clerk Maxwell. He gave us the theory of electromagnetism, and he figured out the formula of speed of light. He figured out the speed of light just using mathematical equations. When I read those equations, I was blown away the power of human creativity.
Inspirational. Thanks so much for joining me today on this week's episode of Project HR, Yogesh.
Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
Thanks to our listeners. And once again, this is your reminder to grab the companion for this episode at projectionsinc.com/podcast. If you'd like to be on Project HR or you know someone who would, feel free to email us at projecthr@projectionsinc.com. And last but certainly not least, remember that a new episode of Project HR drops every Thursday. Make sure you never miss an episode by subscribing to the podcast. Drop us a line, leave us a review, or give us a handful of stars wherever you get your content. That's it from me for now. Let's make it a great day at work.